my sister and I used to go to the movies and watch Fred Astaire and all the tap dancers that performed at that time, and we copied them, and then we would go to different places and dance. That was the beginning. And then I became very interested in African art, in my heritage. And I wrote, university in Ghana, and took a small course. And then the university here in Toronto, they had, see what I mean? They had people coming in from different countries and to study. And there was a lot of them came from Africa. And the university asked us if we would have them for Christmas, different holidays, because they had no family here. So we always had Africans in our house, and they, of course, I had the music or the drums, and I picked their brains, okay? I did it mostly where people accepted it. Many didn't. Even a lot of our own people didn't want to be involved. They didn't want to be involved with Africa. And I just felt it was a privilege to know your heritage. My mother was a dressmaker, and she taught us girls. That was quite a task, learning to sew when you don't like it. But that was my mother. You had to learn to sew. And that was good for me, because I combined it, like I said, and it was profitable. And then when my girls were born and they grew to the point where I thought they should have something, I met Willie Block Hansen. Willie Block Hansen said she'd take the kids, and I used to bring them to their classes. And she said, "You look like a dancer. Why don't you join us?" So I did. A lot of the things that I did were my own development, my own shows. Fashion show. The fashion shows were combined with the dancing. The sewing, the designing was one thing, and the dancing was another, and I just combined the both of them. You know, Regina, Saskatchewan, at that time was just barren. There was nothing for the kids. So I opened a studio there and did shows at the university down there. And the shows were mostly dance. The fashion I didn't use down there. So mostly dance, because, what was I going to say? It was too cold for fashion. One thing I did was I decided I'd go to the Native Center and start classes there. But I went, and they said, yes, that would be marvelous. But when I returned the next day, I was locked out. So I never got to do it there. It was a race thing. They didn't want the kids to, I don't know.
Wow.
And that was a terrible thing, because the young kids just ran around crazy, and they could have been into something. There's a lot of prejudice. A lot of prejudice. You were called all kinds of names when you hit the streets. You were called all kinds of names in your school. In school, you couldn't get a job. You couldn't get an apartment, or living quarters that you'd like to. It was very prejudiced, very, very prejudiced. I know that when I wanted to go to Harvard Collegiate, couldn't get a job nowhere, right? And we eventually, young women, I was about, I was going to high school. We were going to go to high school, my sister and I. I was 14. No, she was 14, I was 15. We had to work on the railroad. That's the only job we could get. And what we did was work in the yards. And our jobs were to take oil drums and put them on the freight cars. And I thought, I'll never have kids, because, I felt by the time I get through this, I won't be able to have children. Things like that. If you want to be happy, we had to make our own way that would make you happy. And that was, whatever was African, I went with it. It's made me very happy. It's made me be closer to my family, to my children, because they were involved with it, with me. I'm very quiet most of the time. And it's made me seek more friendships than I would have had it been just sitting around. You can't dance if you're unhappy, right? So you might as well dance.